All right, so I'll jump in with a quick little intro. Let me uncross my legs and you know, ready?
Yeah, let's
Cut.
do it.
Okay, we gotta do one of these Okay, so I'm sitting in studio with Kathryn Parks and Charlie Logan, director, writer, lead actress, and co-star of 50 Words, which is going to premiere here at the Sarasota Film Festival on April 15th. And so we wanted to have them in studio, talk a little bit about the process of making a film here in Sarasota. It was shot locally, produced by local talent, and we just wanted to hear about that. So welcome, Kathryn and Charlie.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I was not the director, but I was probably almost everything else.
So hit me with a little bit of set up the whole project.
Lily Green, you're that girl desperately looking for love.
So this is a romantic comedy, and it is essentially about a theater actress who is going through a bad breakup, and so she has an idea to write her bio in the playbill as a personal ad, and then suddenly she finds herself swamped with admirers. So it's definitely a romantic comedy. It's a short film. It's about 27, 28 minutes. And it's meant to just be like a cute, sort of feel-good, funny look at dating in the contemporary and theatrical world.
I see. And so you played the lead.
Yes.
And Charlie, what was your character in the?
My character is kind of the instigator of the whole thing because he's the one that dumps her in the first place.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you're the heartless.
Yep.
You're like the
Yeah.
antagonist. I see.
Yes. And it's interesting because in the film there's like a show within the film called Words Won't Do, and that's the musical that they're about to put on. And so they're actually co-stars in the musical, and they've been dating for a while, and then they split, and the rest begins.
Oh, so is that kind of where that's like how the movie starts, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty
Cool.
much.
And so, how do you, because you're not like a full-time movie star actress here in Sarasota, right? There's not like a secret
Not yet.
Hollywood hiding here yet, right? Like, yeah, I'm sure like you're fully capable of it. I love, I love that this is coming out here, but like, how do you get into this, right? Like, you have a full-time job.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, what even inspired you to say, I'm gonna make a movie?
Well, it probably all started when I was like 7, and I knew at such a young age that I wanted to act on camera. I felt like drawn to it, from a very young age. And my background, because I'm from Sarasota, there's so much theater that goes on here, and less so film, right? So that's where my background is. That's what I studied in college. But I've always had this urge to do more film acting. And when I decided to stay here, make a career here, I knew I was giving up some of that by not going out to LA or wherever, Atlanta right now, everyone is. But I thought to myself that if I really wanted to pursue this passion of mine, I was probably going to have to make something happen myself. There is a good amount of opportunities in Tampa or Orlando or Miami, but if I really wanted to make something happen here, I was going to be the instigator. So having this background in theater and then doing film jobs here and there professionally in the region kind of set me up to know who the players were and what I could do to then create something out of nothing a little bit. So that's what I decided to do.
Yeah. There's a strong film community here. Obviously there's the film festival, which you guys will be at. Is it this weekend? Is that what the 15th falls?
Yeah, it starts this weekend. There is a strong film community, but it's not like what you would find in a bigger city for sure.
Right.
A lot of it is independently driven, and there's that I know of hardly any incentives for big production companies or any production companies to come to Florida and create a film. That's why so much film has dropped off. We used to have like Burn Notice being shot in Miami. We used to have Ballers was down there. And there was things all around, being shot all around Florida, but that's kind of stopped, and all the work has moved to Georgia. and the Southeast, because there's a lot more film incentives
Yeah,
there.
the state dropped all their incentives. I don't remember what year it was, but we did a piece on that not
Yeah.
long ago.
Yeah,
with Ethan Hawke
Right.
when he was in town.
Right.
But the county itself has
Yes.
a small incentive program, which is like
Absolutely.
$250,000 or something like that. Which is not a lot, but it's something. So at least that's why I say there's a strong, at
Yes.
least in this
In
community,
Sarasota County,
there's like a pull.
yes.
You've got Ringling here.
Yeah.
They're doing the soundstage up there. You've got the film festival.
Yes.
And there seems to be a lot of desire to turn this into
Absolutely.
a stronger film making community. That's why I'm interested to know like what the process was like. What were the biggest challenges? How do you find funding for a project like this? So
Right.
maybe we can dive into
Yeah.
some of that if you don't mind.
Not at all. And I think there's also like a lot of grassroots, great, like Minnesota Films is a group that is kind of on Facebook and beyond. And there's a New Florida Cinema group, which is also local, and they get together and share films and resources. And so there is a lot going on here, and it is a great community and one that I definitely tapped into to complete my film.
And even outside of, I know there's like a distinction between like films and like just video content in general, but even outside of the proper, like the film type production stuff, there's a lot of video makers in the area.
Yes.
There's a lot of people telling visual stories, whether it's animated, whether it's, YouTube style vlog videos or whatever. Even like there's a guy called the Backyard Scientist who's here in Sarasota.
Oh, yeah, I've seen
millions
some of
of
his
followers.
YouTube, yeah.
And they're brilliant. Like he does really cool stuff, you
Yeah.
know? And so there's little things that you just see sprouting and popping in this region that you may not expect.
Absolutely.
So what was in your mind, and maybe Charlie, you can jump in here, the biggest hurdle as far as like, was it money? Was it pulling people together? Was it finding talent? Like what was the biggest hurdle for you guys as you guys produced this?
A lot of things actually really came into place easily. Finding talent, well, because of my background in theater, I know a lot of very talented people here, and they may not be used to being on camera all the time, but I know they're great actors, and I was able to pull in a lot of those people. I know like you knew a lot of people in the cast already, for sure.
Yeah, it was lots of people that I was used to doing shows with, or in different capacities of the theater. Kathryn's very good about every once in a while just randomly calling me up and being, "Hey, I got a gig. What are you doing?"
So are you local? Do you do like local theater as well? Is that where your
Yeah.
background, or tell me a little bit about,
I mean, local-ish and definitely in the state of Florida now.
Okay.
I moved back here from New York about 6 years ago and have just been hoofing it around the state since.
Okay.
But I mostly base myself in Sarasota and in the surrounding areas. I teach in this area, so I always come back here one day a week, so I try not to be too far away. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we definitely, finding actors was not a challenge. Raising money was a little difficult, for sure. We had a crowdfunding campaign. I think we raised about $3,500, which was hugely helpful, and there was some generous people in the community that contributed to it. I also put in some of my own money, as did Mark Palmer, who was our director. So that's what we used to kind of make it happen. A lot of people and places volunteered their time and services. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible. And that was lovely, too. That made it incredibly possible for us to accomplish everything. I think one of the biggest challenges we had actually was just like scheduling the thing, because everyone did have other commitments and jobs, and
Getting all the people in the right place at the right time.
getting
was a
all the
little bit-
people in the right place at the right time was kind of tricky. The crew and the cast, and
That was something that stuck out to me. I have a quote here from the press release. It says, "The challenges to producing the 50 words were many. Parks, Palmer, and Buttram is it?
yeah, yes.
Had to schedule productions around full-time jobs, paying clients, rehearsal schedules, zero funding, toddlers, teenagers, and a pregnancy.
Yes.
Relying on the local theater talent, many of the cast and crews had no experience in front or behind the camera. Production team also led a crowdfunding campaign, so you talked about that. $3,500, though the budget was less than $9,000. 13 shoot days, 27 actors, 20 crew members, 70 extras, countless kind gestures, and 18 months later, the film was completed. So, I mean, it's like, that's a lot. It was like a partridge and a pear tree.
It was
Just,
insane.
like throw the kit and the caboodle. A kitchen sink probably was in there at some point because you had to feed everyone.
Probably, we did, yeah. And that's one thing we made sure to do was, we even if we couldn't pay all the actors, they always had food in case they were hungry. And so we did feed everyone. But yeah, I mean, that was a lot of challenges. And
What was the night, the players' night, where we had to start after the show and we were there till the wee hours? Was that like the fight scene and all that, or?
it was like one of our first days of filming,
early
I
on.
think. Yeah, and we so like the players was running Gypsy, and they were so gracious to have us use their space. But the show, I think it was I don't remember. Did they do Twilights there? It must have been a matinee.
I thought that there was one night where we actually had to come in after an evening show because of just
Yeah.
the way the scheduling worked out. So we didn't even start until.
I don't entirely remember. We started very late and we
Yeah.
finished, in the wee hours, like 2 or 3 in the morning. And people probably had to work the next day. I mean, it was definitely.
So was there, like, when you started this, was there like we want to have it done by X, or was it just like, we want to do this, let's just find a way to get it done? And
Yeah.
how do you manage figuring out the timeline on that?
Well, that's a great question. So that was really just me looking at a calendar and knowing a little bit okay, we want to shoot this all, let's say, over the next couple months. So what are weekends that I personally have available, that my director has available, that my co-producer Jamie has available, that we can just, it was like, throwing darts on a calendar
Sure.
and saying, okay, well, let's pick some dates and then I'll reach out to everyone and see who's available.
Right.
And it sort of worked.
So we have a hard time coordinating like 3 or 4, 5 people for a meeting, 10 people for a meeting. So I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
And I probably don't need everyone all the time at
Right.
every shoot, but still, I can.
Well, as long as you have your key people, the rest can sort of come or go as they need. But I was lucky because Charlie, who travels a lot, he was in town.
I was in town and mostly
Yeah.
off at the time. I actually had a month spell where I was pretty much just teaching and doing a couple little gigs here and there. So for
Yeah.
me, it was very lucky and worked out pretty easily.
So what was your favorite part? What was the piece that you'll always remember about this process? What's the thing that the moment where you're like, okay, this is going to come together, do something cool, or I don't know, what was the biggest?
Well, maybe for me, the biggest thing was realizing I didn't have to ask permission to do any of this. I just did it, and people went with it. Don't know why, but they just kind of, believed in whatever vision I had and said, okay. I guess I'm used to always going to someone or something for permission, and this was my first time where I was like, I'm just going to do this.
I really want to follow that string a little bit because that has so much. That's my ethos,
Yeah.
right? That's the thing I tell everyone is just go do it.
Right.
Stop writing about it. Stop telling friends about it. Just pick something up and do the thing, right? Pick up the
Right.
camera, learn the website. I don't know, whatever it is, go do the thing. So what does that mean for you? How will you take that into the other things that you do? Or maybe somebody who's watching this trying to figure out how do I start my passion project or get something like that off the ground? How do you give them something that they can take away from this to do some of that?
I guess, whatever that thing is that's been gnawing at you, just start putting little steps into place to make it happen, and surround yourself with people that believe in you and support you. And maybe, even if you didn't have that, but that certainly helps. And then just do it. And it's really just one chunk at a time. You can't now we have this awesome 27-minute film, I hope. But at the time it was, okay, let me just get together 5 people on this date. And once I get that done, what's next.
Right, let's shoot one scene,
Yeah.
then the next, and then the
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
Did you ever think like web series first, small YouTube video? Like it
No.
was always this is going to be.
Yeah, it was pretty much always. I guess I had done a lot of web series style things at my job at Michael Saunders and Company with Mark Palmer, who
That was
directed
smooth
this.
what you did right there.
Yeah, thanks. And so in the evolution of who I am, I was like, okay, the next thing I want to do is a film.
Yeah.
And so
Will you consider any of that? Because I'm sure you have so much extra content, right? Like, would you consider doing any of that? How are you thinking about like distribution? Because in my mind, the most beautiful thing that I'm seeing in the whole space right now is projects like this happening wherever.
Right.
And the barrier to entry to create something beautiful has been dropped, right? And so a crew like you guys can go and create a beautiful end product, whether it's like, you know, the Academy Award winner you might one day create or not. Maybe it is, right? Maybe it wins some film festival. I don't know yet, right? But like you did it and you started and you're putting something out there. You're putting these thoughts into the world. And to me, the most amazing thing that I see happening is that's happening everywhere, right? And so you no longer have to have this big budget studio. And so what do you see in that space? What kind of opportunity do you see? Because I like this idea of bridging some of the local theater stuff with this new digital medium. Part of what all of this is hopefully to create a playground to create, how do you blend some of that? How do you do some of those things where people aren't really thinking about that, but could you build something? Could you use that same medium to create something that feels a lot like what a local media company might be, or like a Vice News, but a blended version that like, I don't know. So what do you see as an opportunity in that space as you're talking about that creative exploration, following your dreams, following your passion projects, along with new media and the things that are happening kind of all around us? Like, what do you see as the future of that?
Oh, I
Jump in, Charlie.
Jump in.
Tell me your dreams.
or I'll jump in, but
for me, it's a little bit more just that this was my first opportunity to really do an actual film on the big screen, and not so much on the creative side of things, but just now I'm like, oh, well, that's fun, and it gave me a little bit more confidence to be able to do it, because one of the main reasons I never really got into film is I just didn't know anything about it. I've always been a stage person. That's always been my realm of expertise. And so having done this and having had fun with it and having been happy with the final product, I was like, oh, I'll do that more. I don't, somebody let me do that more. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So is that part of it, is finding those opportunities, or creating,
Yeah,
like you
I
said,
mean,
creating
like,
the opportunity?
yeah, so like for me, I've done other things too, where I did like a chorus line locally, and I created this web series called the Cassie Chronicles, which was something I just shot on my phone, and it was like the evolution from the first day of rehearsal to closing, how I got through this show. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially, you know, in theater world, into film, to kind of document our own journeys and our processes. That said, we have to be careful because there's like rights to, you know, music and stuff. So you can't just like willy-nilly take your stuff necessarily and put it out there if you don't have the rights to it. But I think if you put your own spin on things and you're not, you know, commercially making money off of stuff, then there's more of a gray area.
Yeah, and there's beautiful new tools. I just found this thing called artlist.io. It's you pay a couple $100 for an annual subscription, and the music is royalty free once you pay that licensing fee. And even if I stop paying it, so let's say I didn't renew it next year, whatever I licensed under this agreement, I have in use in perpetuity, and it's not for a single platform. It's not limited to only online distribution. It's literally whatever you want to do with the music. So just even stuff like that was never around. It was not an option just a couple years ago. And so distribution, right? There's a million platforms. You can be on YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Have you thought about digital distribution? Are you holding out specifically for like some movie play? Like what's your plans for the film for distribution here?
I think, well, for now, for the next year or so, we're going to try the film festival circuit, submit it out to festivals. A lot of festivals will not take a film if it's been distributed or is publicly available. So you kind of have to keep it under wraps for a little bit of time. And then we'll definitely distribute it, and I don't know yet what that looks like. I've never done it before, but I've, you know, certainly read up on it, and I'll find the best fit for us. as I get a little closer.
Amazon, I heard, for their Prime, bought the rights exclusively to everything that comes out of Sundance.
Oh, wow.
So essentially, they said anybody, if you get accepted to Sundance, you got a deal for $100,000, right?
Wow.
And so maybe that's not a big deal for the big shots who are going to get the big contracts anyway. But for the average Joe Schmo who's doing projects like this, who gets a chance at Sundance, now you're going to be on Amazon Prime.
That's really cool.
You get, you get some money to maybe fund or repay investors or do whatever, or take the next step, start the next project, whatever. So even things like that with the Netflix, with the Amazon Prime, people are looking for this type of content. The internet is thirsty for independent stuff that is not necessarily, just coming from the status quo. So
Absolutely.
I think there's lots of opportunities for that. As we wrap up here, I have just two final questions. What would you give as a piece of advice for somebody who's an aspiring video storyteller, somebody who wants to get out into this space? Like, what would one piece of advice that you'd give them starting out to be?
Yeah, I would say just start doing it. Take your camera or your phone and just start telling stories. Things that interest you will hopefully interest other people. And you don't have to have a big budget, obviously. You just have to have a story and a little camera, and just do it.
Yeah.
And you just upload it yourself to YouTube, and now you got something.
Casey Neistat or Gary Vaynerchuk, one of those guys. The best camera you have is the one you have on you. So
Right.
I agree with that. What about you, Charlie?
For me, it's the same thing I would say to a stage performer that I would say to a carpenter or anything else in life. Do what brings you joy. Find the stuff that really makes you happy and gives you so much joy that everything else falls into place, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. One final thing is, what would, if you had to go back and do over, what would you do different? Is there anything you might change? Is there anything that you just would love a mulligan on?
My 20s.
As it relates to the movie, we're not talking,
we're not
talking like astrophysics here, right? We're not. Time travel's yet to be invented, but I have hope.
I had a wonderful experience. I don't have anything of that, but you might.
Oh, that's nice to say. I think there were a few times where my brain or my heart or whatever was kind of yelling at me to do something, and I didn't listen to it. And I'm not maybe going to mention what those things were, but listen to the voice inside of you, because it's probably the way to go. And I think there were so many things that I was juggling and thinking about and wanting to have happen that I maybe did things that didn't feel quite right. And I think it still turned out great, and I'm happy with everything. But I think listening to that inner voice is important.
It's the worst feeling in the world to be watching footage and to be thinking in your head, why didn't you just or
I knew it. I knew it then. Why didn't I listen to myself? But there's, for whatever reason, there are things that
and it's hard sometimes, when you're wrapped up. That's the and maybe one day we won't have to deal with it because you'll be able to record HD and 360 and you won't miss the moment. But even something as simple as just turn the camera just a little bit more, and all those little nuances are the things that nobody would ever notice watching the finished product, but you as the artist, as the creator, will always question and want to, could have been more perfect.
Right.
So that's the creator's curse, I think, is that self-criticism.
Yes.
We become our own biggest critics, and hopefully this is a raving success. I wish you guys all the best of luck.
Thank you.
If people want to watch it, April 15th at 3 p.m. And April 21st at 11 a.m. as part of the Sarasota Film Festival. If you want to look that up, be sure to search for Shorts 11 Showcase.
Shorts 11 Florida Showcase.
Florida Showcase.
Yeah.
As part of the Sarasota Film Festival. And with that, we will say goodbye. Catch you next time. Okay.